We have to really be ready to fail. The failure has to be part of the journey.
Modern people in general are really not in touch with intuition. And we've forgotten how to be aware of sensory data, of many of the dimensions of life.
The world today is very different from the world I grew up in. I had a burnout, just worked and worked without taking a moment to reflect. I reconnect with my Icelandic friend Kristín, whom I knew as a kid and now lives in London. And as most people, we're finding it hard to find work-life balance. And so we listed down names of people that have inspired us and could perhaps help us find answers to our questions.
Our world seems like a heap of fragments that it's hard to see how they cohere. Wisdom has been replaced by knowledge, and knowledge has been replaced by information, pieces of data, chunks of data.
One of the challenges we've had recently in business is by going to this fully rational side, we have ground out, expunged creativity from our companies.
I give this to my students. I think, consider this, people. You are awake in a scant 2 tablespoons of your brain, and what about the rest of it, right?
The prefrontal cortex is a bit of your brain that will help you with your learning. It will help you do the wise decisions. That makes your prefrontal cortex a wise owl.
To me, going to unknown is the absolutely rule number 1.
Intuition is not just some pink and fluffy feeling.
The Polynesians were able to map almost the entire Pacific Ocean without a tool because they listened to the ocean. We can't do that anymore.
I think another thing that's been lost in our world is the sense of wonder, the sense of awe, a very rational appreciation that we can't know everything.
It's awareness here and now on the world, and that's everything.
Okay, Hrund, very warm welcome. I am very pleased that you came to my podcast, and I hope we will have an interesting conversation.
I'm sure we will, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, so Hrund, let's establish firstly how to speak out the main word of our conversation. Let me try, it's Insai?
Insai.
Oh, you see? Insai. Insai. Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
It's very good. I know it's hard, but you did it really well. So Insai.
Insai.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a thing in the word. It's a A and a E. Is that like for visual purposes, or is it a?
It's an Icelandic letter.
Icelandic letter. Okay, I assumed.
The pronunciation of it is I.
I.
Yeah, like I, like in English, or like you hurt yourself when you say I.
Okay.
Is that sound?
So I will use this word, and I hope you don't mind, because it will not be perfect. Okay, Hrund, so could you just that we make a groundwork for our listeners? Could you begin with explaining the meaning of the Insai?
Absolutely. So Insai is the Icelandic word for intuition. If you look up Insai in the Icelandic dictionary, you will get a similar definition like you get of intuition in different languages. But the way that we have worked with the word is to write it with a big I and capital S. So it's a concept in this book and the film that we did. And what it gives us is a lens to look with fresh eyes into the world of intuition from all the things that we know today in science, but also from ancient wisdom around the world within us. So Insai, the concept, has a threefold meaning. And it's, first of all, the sea within. Because Insai is made up of 2 words, in, which means inside or into, and sai means to see or the sea. So the threefold meaning of Insai is the see within, which refers to our ever-flowing unconscious mind. Secondly, it means to see within, and that has to do with self-awareness, which is very fundamental as we want to learn to harness and know our intuition. We can't do it without strong self-awareness, so it's about seeing inside yourself. And then thirdly, Insai means to see from the inside out, and that is about navigating the ocean of life from within. And what that means is that when you're deeply connected to the world within you, to intuition, to Insai, you're deeply anchored and grounded in yourself. And it stabilizes everything around you.
And what we didn't mention yet, you are from Iceland. Mm-hmm. And, it sounds a little bit, like maybe meditation or something like this. But how did your connection to Iceland or Iceland itself shaped this, what do you call it? Is it, the concept?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's actually, there's a rich story behind that. So I come from Iceland. I've worked globally most of my life, but also in Iceland. But a lot of the time I worked globally. I worked for the UN and, in different parts of the world. And originally when I started to connect with intuition, it was because I was forced to. I hit a wall, I collapsed, today we call it a burnout. I didn't know that word at the time, at the beginning of the century. So I had just been working in post-conflict reconstruction in Kosovo after the war. I was going through really, really challenging times in my personal life. And I physically and mentally lost direction in life.
How old were you?
I was not 30 yet. I was around young. 28 or 9, yeah. So I was in my late 20s when I had been leading one of the UN agencies in Kosovo. I was very young when I got that opportunity. It was a great opportunity. But there were lots of things I wasn't mature enough to navigate. And then also personal challenges, I think, are something that we need to pay a lot of respect for because they really affect us, the people closest to us and stuff like that. So I kind of lost directions. I was forced to look within, and this is when I get to know intuition. And my way to finding my way back in life, like healing and getting better and stronger and really finding my sense of purpose and hope again, was by connecting with intuition. And this was in Icelandic at the time, so Insai. But because I work globally, it led me to do work with intuition in academia. I created a diploma university program. I traveled the world and I conversed with people, business leaders, scientists, spiritual leaders and shamans about intuition and artists. And I realized after a few years of doing that, I realized that we have very different ways of defining intuition. So for example, in cognitive sciences, you would have people saying, intuition is more like an irrational impulse you should never rely on. All the way to intuition being something new age or woo-woo, which hasn't been backed by science. And then somewhere in between all of this, I would find rigorous research and really compelling personal stories from age-old and very new about how fundamental intuition is to our intelligence and ability to thrive. And so this actually just led me back to my roots, and I started to look at the Icelandic word for intuition with totally new and fresh eyes. And I thought, wow, this is a beautiful word. It's so wise. There's so much wisdom in how the word is put together. It was only put together last century, and the thought behind it is really wise. And so this is how we became to use this word and open it up like a sculpture, a concept, which holds space for both the scientific and the spiritual, but also the poetic and the very concrete, the very pragmatic part of intuition.
this is a very young age to have like this inner conflict or a kind of a burnout. But of course, when you have I think it comes with the challenges you face. Of course, it sounded a bit like PTSD. Maybe a little bit too much, because when you are a soldier and you experience like very, very severe traumatic things, but also I think even when you work in as a I don't know, accountant, maybe it's a little bit too much, but even there you can experience severe things, I think, and you can burn out, because we are individuals, everybody's different.
Absolutely. And like we talk about in my book, just to throw that in here, which I think is very important. I interview a neuroscientist called Dr. Rebecca Granger-Ellis, and she says in a very simple sentence, what the brain interprets as trauma is trauma to the brain and the body.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to give a little bit context, so you made a film, I think exactly about the same topic
with the same title.
Yeah, with the same title in 2016, I think.
Yes, it was launched then.
And I saw the trailer. It's a very, I don't know, it's a very beautiful and I think very well put together trailer. It's just inspiring. And how was the film received? Was it were there people who said, "Wow, this is very inspiring," and how was it with the book maybe?
So this is this is another great question, because I started developing the concept for the film in 2010. And it was a little bit too early. 2013, 14, things got a little bit more open. So by the time we launched it in 2016, people were more open to it, and it really hit a nerve. So, and I love to share this with you in your wonderful podcast in Germany, because the film was shown worldwide on Netflix and different streaming services, but it was world premiered in Berlin. And so in Germany, I read this somewhere, the film was shown in over 30 cinemas around the country for half a year, which we were extremely proud of. So that was an amazing starting point. So the film was, still today, I receive letters from people who've watched and are still watching the film. It's now available again on Amazon Prime in Germany, for example. So it comes and goes in different mediums. I think it's available on Apple Plus in some countries as well, and Vimeo on demand. So the reactions from the film were very many. And I would, because I'm the storyteller and the writer and co-director, I would receive so many letters and messages from people who one was working in a factory in Brazil, one is a professor in economics in Germany, just very different people who would say, thank you for putting words to what I didn't know how to express, but I've always felt, and stuff like that. So it deeply resonated. And one of the things that I find really it's a nice side story. People from around the world have tattooed their bodies with Insai after having seen the film.
With the word or with
the tattoo? Yeah, with a word, and sometimes there's decoration. And I have pictures of some of this on my Instagram. And I just,
beautiful,
because I went to Brazil in 2018 and I gave a talk at the Center for Innovation and Industries in Rio de Janeiro. And this is when I met 3 people who had tattooed their bodies with Insai. And I didn't know people did that. So I started to research, and now I've seen pictures from everywhere. It's interesting.
Couldn't it be more indifferent, the two countries, Brazil and Iceland?
Those are very, very different countries.
Very different, yeah.
Exactly, very different.
I wanted to ask you, like, the film and the book, how different are they? And could you tell us more about the book? Like, is it a practical book? Is it an informational book? Yeah.
Yes. So the book and the film are quite different. And that has to do with both the fact that when you do a film, it's different than writing a book. I also did the film many, many years ago. I conceived of the concept before 2013 probably. And the book goes deeper into recent research and different take on it. And so the book is I hope inspiring. It's definitely informative. It brings together threads from very different parts of the world and disciplines and schools of thought, but it's also a very practical guide. It's a very accessible, practical guide for anyone, whatever age, to either start to connect mindfully with intuition or to continue the practice of doing it and making it an effortless way of how we go through life. That's important to me.
So, of course, we will link the film and the book down below in the description. But regarding the book, is there something like practically you can share, or is it like this? If you share it, you don't have to read it, basically. Of course, there's much more in the book, but in regards to the, like, how do we connect to this intuition?
So I'm happy to share from the book. I think reading the book is always an experience, and in particular if people do the exercises. So in the book, I gradually give people seeds and tips and what I call keys to insight and intuition. So one of the things that I found, there are a few obvious things like certain breathing tactics will make you be more present. When you are more present, and this I show lots of research and everything, but I'm going to keep it simple. When you are more present, you're more able to think clearly and tap into what you already know and can do, but also to connect with other people in the world around you. And so one of the most important ways we do this is simply breathing in a certain way. Most of us breathe too lightly, and we lack depth in breath. So there's a lot of interesting research behind this. And so in the book, I give tips on breathing and how to be more present in different moments, like you're in a meeting or you're with a family or you're by yourself. But one of the things I love sharing with people is something that I learned many years ago, and it's the most powerful tool I think that I've ever been taught. It sounds very simple, but it's very powerful, and it's like this. As we go through the day, we pay attention to lots of things, but do we pay attention to what it is that we're paying attention to? And so we are living in an information storm and stress and distraction. So my key to people is what I call attention journaling. Pay attention to what you pay attention to and document it in your journal. This method, this practice is extremely powerful, both to be more mindful of the thoughts you think, which ones to let go of and which ones to keep. It makes you more self-aware in general. It makes you more aware of the voices in your head. You know, some of the voices that we have recurring, they're not even ours, and we're not aware of it. And then also attention journaling in magnificent ways. I both used it myself, but also taught it at the university. It has the capacity to open up your creativity in ways that are very, very powerful. Because if you think about it, in order to be original thinker, in order to be creative, in order to experience life well lived, your attention needs to be turned on. You have to pay attention to all those glimmers and beautiful things and the things that people don't necessarily notice, but they're always in front of us. And so, yeah, I could go on like this, as you can hear, but this is a tool I would definitely share. Pay attention to what you pay attention to and document it. See what it gives you.
So this sounds very interesting. So there's also a practical part in the book, of course.
Yeah.
Would you say that this concept, like you described and wrote it down, is common knowledge in Iceland? Or is it maybe more like this? Okay, we know the word, we know the meaning of the word, but
yeah.
it's not like common knowledge.
No, it's not something that we are taught at school. So it really is about opening up the word in a way that the person who created, in Iceland we have a very, very strict rule of creating authentic words for everything that's new in the world. So for example, in many languages you would adopt the English word intuition and you would put an accent to it, like intuition or something like that, or whatever the original word comes from. And so in Iceland, like for example, we have the word for computer is the guy who created the word for computer. He sat down and thought, so what does a computer do? And so he created the word tölva to grasp what a computer is, because it's a combination of a number and a völva, which is the seer in the old Norse stories, so stuff like that. So Icelandic is very transparent. So it's a beautiful language to really look at words and understand how they open up the world to us in different ways. We have this in all languages. So when we showed the film in Iceland, it was also very popular in Iceland, and I look forward to publishing my book in Icelandic around the new year. Then Icelanders were very happy with this opening up of the concept. We are open to how we live with our words and how we bring them more to life, I would say. But it's not something that you learn at school.
You talked also about the challenges of modern life. Which would you say are like main modern barriers in our life? What I mean by that is, what things in our modern life are, most destructive? What would you say?
So when I answer this question, I'm both building it on my research over 20 years and experience, but also recent conversations I've been able to have with people from around the world because of the book. I think the main challenge that we're faced with today as humans and in this context is lack of connection within. So if you think about it, we have like $1 trillion businesses, very sophisticated experts that are honing in on our intuition and our attention. Our attention is a very, very scarce resource in the world today, already, also before this century. But the fact is that it's being hijacked all the time by some external forces. What happens to us as humans when we don't get to be the stewards of our own attention and be connected with our intuition, we lose our anchoring and grounding in the world. The earth beneath our feet in a symbolic way seems to disappear. So we don't know where to place ourselves. We don't know what to follow. And there is old spiritual wisdom that will always bring us back to saying our greatest sense of security will always come from deep within. We have these Buddhist stories and traditions saying this Buddha lost everything he had, his family, his house, his material wealth, and that made him spiritually stronger. So we have all these different ways of explaining that we need inner security. When I speak to therapists, for example, recently a therapist from the US who was telling us about the political landscape in the US and the elections, he said to us, the thing that people struggle with the most is finding the anchor inside themselves. They're disconnected from themselves.
It is very funny because at the one hand, I love the life we have right now. It's so comfortable. It's so very comfortable. You have everything you need. You have the PC and the laptop and the smartphone and all these things. You can go to the gym and work out. You can do whatever you want, basically. And on the other hand, when you lose this connection and when you are afraid to walk barefoot in the forest or, something like this. When you go to the sea and you see people, who don't jump into the water because, they are, just not comfortable.
Yes.
It makes me think always. I think on the one hand, be grateful for the things you have, like this comfortable life, but also challenge yourself and go back to the roots, go back to what is good, to what is to what is natural, really, for us people. And another question popped into my mind: is Icelandic a religious country? Like,
no, I wouldn't say that.
Okay, because it's always this question, which I have, like religion, intuition, spirituality. It's something. Could it be combined, or is it like this? I think it's, it can be, coexistent, I think, but sometimes, it's not that easy, I think, for not for many people, but for some people, I think,
Yeah, I think, and this is a great reflection. I think that, I would say that there is an important distinction between, in my view, between religion and spirituality. So religion is more institutionalized. There's a certain face or faces to the god, or, and there's an institution and there's an authority and power behind that. But spirituality is more something that you have inside you. You are spiritual or you're not. And sometimes we think we're not spiritual, but we are, and vice versa, so I think that's another thing. And one way to explain spirituality is to say that you believe in something bigger than yourself. There are bigger forces at work. And even to experience a sense of awe, because the nature is just so stunning or beautiful, which we do a lot in Iceland. And I also do in Germany, by the way, because I just love how green and all the green Germany is and all the big trees. Then nature is really our oldest mentor in connecting us with the real world around us. There is so much beauty in nature, and there is so much that we haven't been able to explain, which makes us feel in awe, of the wisdom found in nature, or even how nature controls our lives, like you see now with climate change. And coming from Iceland, we know this really well. So I think that, this is another, just another thought on that. I think when we talk about intuition and the human spirit and human intelligence, I think it's time that we bring all these different perspectives together and we make room for all of them. Like, we can be very scientific and spiritual at the same time. We can be very poetic and pragmatic at the same time. We can be very much living in the now, but brilliant in martial arts or business strategy. These things actually go really well together. And that's part of the reason why I do the work I do today, is because we need to remember these connections. They're not separate like compartments or silos at all.
What martial art do you do?
I don't actually do martial arts. It's a great question. But with presence, when we talk about being present, we often associate it with mindfulness or meditation or yoga. But to be present is actually what you need to do as a handball coach, which I, for example, interview in my book, Alfred Gíslason, who is the national handball coach of Germany. What you need to do as somebody who's brilliant in martial arts or even military strategy is to be present, because when we are present, what it does to our intellect is that it enables us to bring together and harness all the expertise and knowledge and intuition that we have in the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, because I had like 1 or 2 weeks ago a jiu-jitsu instructor. He has an academy in Berlin.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of martial arts because it's a thing in our world which comes very, very close to like flow state meditation, very close, because for example, jiu-jitsu, you can't take your eyes and your head and your mental state off of the thing you are doing right now, because otherwise you get strangled, and that's and
exactly
you come to a flow state. And it's so funny for me that especially academic persons it tend to be like this. They see it as a barbaric thing. But it is opposite of that, because the people who are doing this, for example, are like there's a this word.
Variety
of people, you know, from I don't know, CEO to cleaning lady, everybody who does this is very friendly and the exact opposite of barbaric. And it's a very, very fine method, I think, to, you know, to get into a flow state and, on the other hand, you know, to be very competent in, you know, self-defense.
Absolutely.
And let me ask you another thing. Intuition and flow state. Is there a similarity, would you say?
Absolutely. So I'll jump into that question by mentioning an interview I do with a guy called Mark Pollock in my book. He's the first blind man to cross the South Pole. He was an extreme athlete. He ran the Gobi Marathon more than once, blind, an amazing rower. Like, he's an incredible guy from Ireland. A few years ago, just before he got married to the love of his life, Simone, he fell down a few floors and he got paralyzed. And you can just imagine how much this turned his life upside down. Lying in the hospital, he's thinking like, oh my God, I'm not only blind, I'm also paralyzed. So what he did, one thing led to another. Of course, there's a deep personal story behind this, but one thing led to another, and he decided to commit himself to finding cure for paralysis in our lifetime. And I remember when I first met him in 2014 or so, I was like thinking like, oh my God, but that's impossible, you know. But then I followed Mark Pollock, and he's been able to do some incredible things with a team of scientists and technical people. For example, being the first paralyzed person to walk with the help of electrons and technology. But anyway, so he, in the book, when I asked him about how he would define intuition and Insai, he said, you know, originally I thought bauchgefühl, you know, like stomach, like gut feeling. No.
Okay.
I'm just like throwing it in that I know that word in German. I'm just boasting a little bit. No, but so he says the first thing I thought about was a gut feeling. But then he said, actually, when I think about it better, Insai, the sea within, you know, the ever-flowing consciousness that we are tapping into through our intuition is a flow state. So we can't get into a flow state unless we are harnessing and tuning into our intuition. And you know, flow state is the highest form of attention human beings can offer. It's our highest form of focus. It's our highest performance state. So it is absolutely connected. And maybe if I may, because what I've also learned is important to explain is that because intuition is fundamental to our intelligence, it's not just one piece of many. It's fundamental. So what that means is that it enables us to mix together the different components of our intelligence that we have. For example, in order to reason well, you need good intuition. Without intuition, there wouldn't be much innovation. Like psychologist Gerd Gigerenzer from the Max Planck Institute has been writing about here in Germany. And so it's very important to understand that intuition it's borderless. It doesn't fit into a silo. And so one of the ways we explain Insai is to say the sea within cannot be put into boxes or silos because then it ceases to flow. It stops flowing. So yes, it's very much connected to a state flow.
Thank you for the explanation and also for sharing the story. It is an incredible story, and I've never heard about him. He's Icelandic. You mentioned it. And this is also what I read recently about...
Do you mean Mark Pollock's story?
Yes.
No, he's from Ireland.
He's from Ireland. Okay, sorry.
Ireland. Yeah.
Sorry to butcher that.
Yeah,
but
okay.
This is exactly what I read recently, the meaning of life. They discovered, you know, scientifically, that if you commit to a cause, to a vision, even if it's hatred, like even if it's like negative, you are happier because you have a vision, you have a route to go by, and this is exactly what he did, but in a positive way, and this is a very powerful thing. And isn't it funny that like when we examine his situation, for most people this would be the end. Let's be clear, this would be the end because it's tragic. But isn't it funny that people or human beings who are, when we examine the situation, who are way better off, could be and often are more unhappy? This is fascinating to me. Fascinating. Yes. So it's about what you make, what you make of it, I think.
Yeah, and also, this makes me think about. In my book, we refer to a study, and I cite the neuroscientist I mentioned earlier about what is it that makes other people more resilient than others. And so, without going into all the details, one of the things that stand out is, like you say, it's that deep sense of belonging and purpose. It's a deep sense of security. You are safe to express yourself. And you're in safe space, with other people. That's very important. But another thing that I found I love actually, and that's also with Mark Pollock, because he has that, and that sense of humor. So one of the fundamental things that actually make us resilient is a sense of humor. So whether you look at it through the neurons and the brain and our nervous system, or you look at it through our perspective on things, like if something goes south, then how do we tackle it? Do we just, go to sleep and never want to wake up again? Or do we just make a laugh and do the best of, all these different things. So I find that very, very interesting. And also what you say about, which is very scary, you can be a very creative, you can be in a flow state and you may be wanting to destroy the world, yes. Which is a scary thing. You can be doing something that's not good for the greater good. But in my book, I do make the point that I am writing about ethical intuition and ethical insight, because what is very interesting, I think, for people to remember also is that there's a difference between instinct and intuition. Intuition is developed over time. Your intuition can change over the course of your life because it is shaped by how you expose yourself to the environment that you're in. So if you immerse yourself in a world that's very violent, aggressive, it's breaking you down, like social media and smartphones is turning out to be for a lot of young people. We know this through this research. Or if you're brought up in a way that's very, very much to the detrimental of your well-being, then this will shape your intuition. And so that's another reason why it's particularly important for us to think about how we are nourishing and be aware of what we're taking in with our whole body, because intuition is embodied. It's not just a small part of the brain. So we pick up information with all our senses and body, and only 1% or maximum 5% of all this information is conscious to us. So most of the things that we are experiencing and sensing and taking in are unconscious to us, which is yet another reason why it's so important to understand what intuition is, to befriend it, to align with it, and be our own experts in our own intuition, so that we can be in charge of our own intelligence.
Yes, I think that are the perfect sentences, for maybe wrapping up the intuition part of this interview. I'm very grateful, that you put out the message into the world, and that people can buy now your book, and especially, that your film is available now on Prime. Yeah. But it is not available on Netflix.
No, it's not on Netflix.
Okay.
That I know of, no. Okay. It's kind of hard to keep track, but no, I don't. I am pretty sure it's not on Netflix, and it's not on Netflix in Germany.
They change it a lot, even on Netflix. But let me ask you also, for me personally, and maybe for my listeners who are mostly based in Germany right now, you are right now in Berlin?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so you experienced the German culture, you experienced the Icelandic culture. Are there, from your point of view, some obvious differences and maybe even some funny differences?
So that's a great question. So I don't feel like I've entirely tapped into the German psyche. So I'm in Berlin, I have friends from different parts of the world, but what I think I'm also learning from Germans is that Icelanders are probably in general known to be relatively flexible. You know, we have these like honestly living in, have you been to Iceland?
Never.
So I'm not kidding you, like you wake up in the morning and it feels like it's a nice kind of fall weather, you know. And then it's 11 o'clock and there's a snowstorm and you're like, why? And then in the afternoon it's sunny again and the snow has disappeared.
Exactly what a German would say.
Yeah, what would they say?
I mean, they would complain, of course.
Yeah, it's like, what's the plan here?
Of course,
what are we? Yeah, exactly. And so it's stuff like that which makes you a little bit like, you know, we have this joke, if you don't like the weather in Iceland, wait 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you know, there are things around, I think, the structure and the organization, and that probably people feel differs. And I had a conversation with a journalist yesterday here in Berlin, and she really helped me also reflect on the fact that coming from Iceland, we gave ourselves the permission, actually with a group of philosophers and Icelandic experts, to open up the word Insai, like a sculpture, and redefine what it means in a film, in a book, which is now a broader narrative around the things we know about our intelligence and intuition. So, yeah.
And where did you grow up? In a city or in the countryside of Iceland?
So I grew up in a town called Garðabær, which is like 15 minutes drive from Reykjavik. But when I was growing up, it was probably more like a countryside than, you know, especially to Germans. So I would, you know, play in the lava field close to home. I had a very vivid imagination. I came running home because there were trolls following me or some monsters in the lava field. You know, we didn't even have keys to our homes, which I think is also a more common story in different parts. We didn't need to lock the front door. It was all very friendly and remote in that sense. So yeah, I grew up there.
The Icelandic people, they meant to be, I think, the happiest people on earth.
Yeah, I think we score among the highest. Yeah, I think Finns are also pretty high. It's an interesting survey because it asks people how happy you are, and so it depends on how people respond. But yeah, we are among the happiest people on earth. But we also, unfortunately, take a lot of medicine for anxiety and depression. I think we score really high there as well. We have like really high records in many different. Wow. Yeah, it's a pity, right?
Do you know when Iceland was inhabited by human beings?
Yeah, so this is a very, very long time ago. So like, you know, in Iceland we have the oldest parliament in the world. It's from 930.
But it should be quite recently. Like it's not, we are not talking about 10,000 years. No. I like from my perspective, weren't it the Vikings?
Yeah, it was the Vikings. We also have stories of Irish monks that came to Iceland and lived in Iceland, and you know, there's these different historical explanations. I once read about Mongolians coming all the way to Iceland. But yeah, the Vikings were said to have inhabited Iceland in the Viking Age, and yeah, so a very long time ago and before Christianity.
It's very interesting, this story. So, you know, when we basically, you know, maybe Danish or Swedish, I don't know, Norwegian people, very interesting. But the funny fact is that I never went to Iceland, but I have like the feeling that I know a little bit of Iceland because I read A Journey to the Center of the Earth from Jules Verne. I love the book,
yes.
and I'm looking forward to read it with my son. And it's this like very, you know, it's a like all-time favorite of mine, and it's this symbiotic journey between Germany, Hamburg, then Iceland, then of course the core of the earth, the journey through that, and then, you know, where you end up for those who want to read it. I don't want to spoil it, but it's such a beautiful story. And, you know, from that book, I know words like, you know, like your last name, this Dottir. I don't know if it's, you know, every Icelandic person has this kind of last name.
Most of us.
And what's the word for volcano?
Eldfjall.
Yeah, this is the word from the book, and it's such a beautiful, you know, story. And I have one last question, of course, for all the participants of this podcast, but I've one last thing which popped into my mind right now. Isn't it funny, like when you take the concepts of ikigai from Japan or hygge from Denmark, you know, you have all this, I don't know. The question is, what do you think? What shapes that kind of concepts? Is it the nature around the people, or you know, it's this weird question. What was first, the egg or the, you know?
So I just speaking from my own personal take and the way that if you look at the literature in Iceland, our writers and what we write about, even clothing designers, the way that they design their patterns or tell the story of their clothes, it's very weather and nature related. So
makes sense.
So if you think about language, I mean, once upon a time we didn't have written language, and studies have been done on groups of people living around the world, and societies that don't have written language, they usually have a much better relationship with the ecosystems in nature. It's interesting, right? Because it wires our brain. So definitely the words that we both create around how we experience the world shape how we experience the world. Mm. But I also think that where we take the words from is from the environment, right? So I think that the nature and the environment that we are in, and especially these relatively old words like Insai, ikigai, and hygge, they are taken from a cultural environment that wasn't as industrial as it is today. It was more like a society, community, you know, and in the case of Insai, it's like you can hardly have a stronger reference to the natural forces within us and around us.
Mm. But it's very, first of all, the explanation is very, very good and very interesting, but you have these words, lagom in Sweden or Ubuntu, South Africa. You know, all these concepts were shaped by the people and the nature, or dolce far niente in Italy. You know, it's so interesting. The world is interesting, and what you said is very, very true. Words have power, and they, you know, it's so obvious. Hrund, I want to thank you for the conversation, for the interesting and very, very informative conversation. I want to ask you the last question of the podcast on a voluntary basis, so you don't have to answer the question. But every guest I ask, you know, the same question. And do you have an answer for the question, what is the meaning of life?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a very placative question also, you know.
So in this very moment, what came to my mind is, I think the meaning of life is to live it fully. And what I mean by that is to love and be generous in spirit. I think that is the meaning of life and what gives life meaning.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the answer. Thank you for the interview. And I wish you all the best.
Same to you. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.